Welcome to Talk Tickers. We cut through the noise of earnings calls to bring you the core intelligence.
That's right.
Today, we're diving deep into the latest business update from AST SpaceMobile. Get ready for the essential takeaways on their recent performance and what they're aiming for next.
Yeah, it looks like the first quarter of 2025 was, well, pretty significant for them.
Oh, yeah.
They're calling it a strong start, even an incredible inflection point. Seems like the focus now is really on, accelerating the network launch and starting to see some revenue come in.
Okay, an inflection point. So what were the key numbers and announcements then? What really jumped out from this update for someone just trying to get up to speed?
Well, headlines. They unveiled a pretty packed orbital launch plan. We're talking 5 launches scheduled just over the next 6 to 9 months.
5? Wow.
Yeah, a big push there. And on manufacturing, they seem to be on track, aiming for a cadence of 6 Block Two BlueBird satellites per month by Q4 this year.
6 a month. Okay.
We also saw gateway equipment bookings hit $13.6 million in Q1.
Yeah.
And they expect that to continue, maybe around $10 million per quarter for the rest of 2025.
And the financials, the spending.
Right. Q1 non-GAAP adjusted cash operating expenses were $44.9 million. Capital expenditures came in around $124 million.
Okay.
And they ended the quarter with a decent chunk of cash, $874.5 million. Looking ahead, they're talking about potential revenue for 2025 in the, $50 to $75 million range. But definitely weighted towards the second half of the year.
Okay, $50 to $75 million back-end loaded. Got it. But 5 launches in 6 to 9 months, that sounds, incredibly ambitious. What's the strategy there? Why the rush?
Yeah, it's aggressive. The main goal seems to be getting over 60 satellites deployed during 2025 and 2026.
60?
It's all about achieving that continuous coverage in their key markets, think US, Europe, Japan. Plus, fulfilling some government commitments they have.
Right.
The first launch for these Block Two BlueBirds is actually scheduled for July. They really hammered home that getting these satellites up and running quickly is, directly tied to starting commercial service and getting that revenue flowing.
Makes sense. Now, these Block Two BlueBird satellites, they keep calling them the largest ever commercial communication satellites in low Earth orbit. What's the big deal about size here? What does that actually enable?
Good question. The size is, it's crucial. It allows for much, much larger antennas on board.
Okay.
Think of it like this. Bigger antennas mean they can do much more precise beamforming. So they can really focus their signals on specific areas, whether it's over land or sea.
Okay. More targeted.
Exactly. Which is really valuable for things like, say, emergency communications or specific government needs where you need reliable, focused connectivity.
Right.
And, just inherently, a bigger satellite means more room for powerful tech, leading to better capacity and bandwidth overall.
Right. Let's talk more about that tech. They mentioned progress in manufacturing and also developing their own custom ASIC chips. What's the significance there?
They're definitely pushing hard on manufacturing the Block 2s, aiming for 40 of them initially. They're doing a lot of it in-house, vertical integration. The idea is that this speeds things up, makes it more efficient, helps control costs. The goal is hitting that 6 satellites per month rate by Q4.
Okay. And the ASICs?
Right, the ASICs. These are their custom chips.
Yeah.
Apparently they offer 10 times the processing bandwidth compared to the FPGAs they use now.
10 times? Wow.
Yeah, big leap. They're in the final stages, assembly, testing, and should be ready to go into satellites maybe as early as June.
That soon?
Seems like it. These chips are expected to handle up to 10 gigahertz in processing bandwidth per satellite and support peak data speeds, up to 120 megabits per cell. So it's not just a small step up. It sounds like a pretty fundamental upgrade to their satellite capabilities.
Okay, so the tech is moving forward. How is that translating into, actual commercial progress? Are we seeing any real-world results yet?
Well, they did highlight a pretty significant demonstration. Rakuten Mobile in Japan managed a 2-way broadband video call.
Using their system.
Yeah, using AST SpaceMobile's Block 1 satellites, crucially connecting to just regular unmodified smartphones.
Okay, that is a big deal. That's the core promise, isn't it?
Exactly. It's a major proof point. Looking ahead, the plan is to activate initial cellular broadband services in the US, Europe, and Japan. They'll be using that premium low-band spectrum through their big partnerships. AT&T, Google, Rakuten, Verizon, Vodafone.
So hitting multiple big markets at once.
Yeah. Seems like the idea is to activate them kind of simultaneously to really test and fine-tune the network across different environments before they go for a wider commercial rollout.
Interesting strategy, and good to see those big operator names still involved. They also mentioned some government business updates. What's happening there?
Yes, a couple of things. They got a special temporary authority, an STA from the SCC. It's for FirstNet direct-to-device connectivity.
FirstNet, that's the public safety network.
Right, using the public safety band 14 spectrum. So that's a step towards serving first responders, which is a key area.
Definitely.
And they also landed a new contract. It's with a government agency through a prime contractor for communication support land, sea, and air.
Any sense of the value?
Potentially low tens of millions of dollars over the next, say, 12 to 18 months. And that's on top of the $43 million contract they already have with the U.S. Space Development Agency.
Okay, so building some momentum on the government side, too. That's good validation.
Absolutely. These kinds of contracts really help prove out the tech's reliability and versatility.
Let's circle back to the money side, then. They mentioned higher operating expenses and CAPEX. What's driving that, and how are they funding everything? It sounds expensive.
It is expensive. The higher operating costs in Q1 were mostly from increased R&D spending and also G&A costs. But they said that was pretty much in line with guidance as they scale up, hiring people, expanding operations.
Okay.
Capital expenditures, the CAPEX, was actually a bit lower than expected in Q1, apparently just due to some timing shifts in when launch contract payments were due.
Ah, okay. So timing.
Yeah, but they expect CAPEX to jump significantly in Q2.
Yeah.
That makes sense with the manufacturing ramp up for those 6 satellites a month and, of course, paying for all those launches they have scheduled.
Right. Those 5 launches aren't cheap.
Exactly. And interestingly, the estimated average cost per satellite for the Block 2s has gone up slightly, now pegged at $21 to $23 million each.
Why the increase?
Mainly higher launch costs, which isn't surprising given the market, and also some recently announced tariffs on materials they need.
Okay, so how are they paying for all this? You mentioned their cash balance.
Right. They ended Q1 with that $874.5 million, which was boosted by earlier fundraising. They've also set up a new at-the-market or ATM facility, which gives them flexibility to sell shares if needed. And they mentioned they're actively looking at equipment loan facilities and trying to find non-dilutive funding, like from government sources.
So keeping options open.
Seems like it. A multi-pronged approach to make sure they have the capital runway to actually execute this really ambitious plan.
Makes sense. Okay, one last area, the competitive landscape. How do they position themselves against other satellite players? What makes them different, according to them?
Their main point of differentiation, the one they keep emphasizing, is delivering broadband connectivity. So not just text, but voice, data, internet, even video directly to standard unmodified phones.
Right, no special equipment needed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They argue that a lot of the competition, current or emerging, is mostly focused on just basic text messaging. They also, maybe predictably, point to the physics arguing smaller satellites just face limitations on bandwidth and consistent connectivity compared to their large BlueBirds.
So size matters, basically.
That's their argument. And their strategy combines those big satellites with securing spectrum, both sharing low band with the mobile operators and now acquiring their own mid-band spectrum, which we should probably touch on.
Ah, yes, the Legato spectrum acquisition. What's the story there?
Right. They signed definitive agreements to get usage rights for 45 megahertz of mid-band spectrum here in the U.S. The approval process is apparently on schedule.
And how does that fit in?
Well, this mid-band spectrum complements the low band they're sharing with partners like AT&T and Verizon. Mid-band generally allows for higher data rates and more capacity, while low band is great for coverage. So having both gives them more flexibility.
More tools in the toolbox.
Pretty much. They also mentioned the financing for these usage rights is structured so the collateral is just the spectrum itself, which is interesting. And on gateways, the ground stations, they see those bookings as a leading indicator for where service will launch first. US, Europe, Japan are the initial focus. Because their satellites have such a wide view, they say they need fewer gateways than other constellations typically do.
Okay, that covers a lot. It definitely paints a picture of a company in high gear, really pushing to get this network built and operational.
Absolutely. Aggressive timelines, big technological steps, key partnerships moving forward.
Which brings us perfectly to our segment, This is Not Financial Advice. Outrageous but plausible trade ideas. Based on everything we've heard, the direct-to-phone broadband ambition, the focus on underserved areas, the disruption potential, what's a really speculative, maybe even a bit wild trade idea that springs to mind?
Okay, playing purely devil's advocate here, remember, highly speculative. Given AST SpaceMobile's push for broadband direct-to-handset, potentially bypassing traditional infrastructure in some areas. Here's an idea.
All right, let's hear it.
You could consider a long position in AST SpaceMobile, obviously betting on their success. But pair that by shorting shares of let's say, a traditional satellite internet provider, one that relies heavily on selling specialized dishes and fixed services, especially to rural consumers.
Interesting pairing. What's the logic?
The premise is, if AST SpaceMobile actually delivers seamless broadband to existing phones everywhere, it could really eat into the market for companies that force users to buy and install dedicated hardware, like satellite dishes.
So direct disruption of the existing model.
Potentially. It's definitely high risk, high reward. It hinges completely on AST SpaceMobile executing flawlessly, getting market adoption, overcoming regulatory hurdles, and fending off competition or technological shifts. Lots of it.
In the downside.
Huge downside. If AST SpaceMobile stumbles or the incumbent adapts faster than expected, the short position could blow up if that company performs well. So yeah, truly speculative. But if the vision plays out, the disruption to those traditional players could be quite substantial. Just remember, this is absolutely not financial advice, purely a thought experiment based on their stated goals. Do your own homework, always.
Definitely food for thought, and definitely hitting the outrageous but plausible mark. Well, that's a wrap on our deep dive into AST SpaceMobile's latest update. We've covered a lot: the launch plans, the manufacturing scale-up, those tech developments, partnerships, financials, and the competitive angle.
Yeah, the sheer speed they're aiming for with deployment is pretty striking. And that Rakuten video call demonstration, that's a key milestone to watch. The next few quarters are going to be absolutely critical for them to show they can execute on all these plans and start turning that tech into real revenue.
Indeed. So what stands out most to you? How do you think the space-based network might reshape connectivity down the line? We encourage you, the listener, to dig into their announcements further and think about the implications.
Lots to consider.
Thank you for tuning into Talk Tickers. Join us next time as we unpack another crucial earnings update.